Have you ever had the experience of your parents wanting you to become either a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer? Entering into high school this year made me realize that choosing a career path is at the forefront of my education. In a blink of an eye, I'll be at a university, and pretty soon, I will have to choose a major. But perhaps the burning question is, do I choose the major, or does the major choose me? So what really is the drive of our dreams of getting a certain job or attending a certain school? If your parents are both doctors, are your genetics just wired for you to follow in their footsteps? Or is there another force acting on your future choices? Today, I am here to discuss the concept of nature versus nurture and which one has a stronger impact on children's path to adulthood. For centuries, scientists have been in an ongoing debate about children's personal development. The context of this argument is whether genetics play a stronger role or if the child's experiences play a stronger role in determining their own personalities and their own futures. In a recently published, medically reviewed article on Very Well Mind, they stated that nurture is kind of the concept where experiences and environments have a larger say in one child's own maturity. So, in other words, one child is more affected by what they have seen and what they have done. Nature, on the other hand, is a concept that doesn't focus on our environment. This concept tells us that we are shaped by our genetics. So if your parents have specific genetics, those traits will be what makes up their own children. For centuries, this debate has been really intriguing for many people that have studied children's mental and psychological development. For me, personally, I think that children are more affected by their experiences, and they have a larger say in how they'll develop. What happens during adolescence is that many children are developing their own neurons. The neurons in their brains are increasing rapidly, and their interconnectedness increases. So we start to develop more complex thinking abilities, and we can see how we're actually starting to differ from other people in society and from our own parents. This means that the real factor that accounts for our maturity lies beyond our own genetics and reaches into the field of our own experiences. I have moved 7 times out of my 14 years of life, so I'm pretty well adapted and well versed in change and adaptation, not by my choice, but by my circumstances especially. When I first moved to China from suburban life in Canada and the United States, the first thing I realized was that I was greeted by not only jet lag, but also culture shock. Almost every aspect of life in the United States was vastly different from my life here in China. I especially started to realize that educational standards are so much higher. For instance, every night I was worrying about my constantly deteriorating grades. Where I could have scored an easy A+, I was facing B's and C's on my report card instead. After a few months of my new life, I realized that scoring an easy A didn't exist, and in order to get anything above an 80, I would have to put in a ton more effort and a ton more time. Personally, I felt that this experience shaped me a lot, and I started to realize something else as well. Teaching is executed in a different way in China. When I was in America, in my old school, we had a science test. And I was 100% sure that I'd failed, like failed. And after class, I asked some of my friends how they felt about their tests, and all of them were sure that they had failed too. But after we got our results back, instead of making us feel ashamed of our grade and talking about how we could have done better but we didn't try hard enough, the teacher complimented us on the originality of our own answers, which I felt was ironic, and said that this was an amazing learning experience that we could all grow from. In turn, I found myself getting really easily offended by almost everything my new Chinese teachers were pointing out to me, just because they didn't spend half the amount of time that my American teachers spent sugarcoating all of their feedback. It's the same thing at swim practice. My old coaches in America used to praise me and hold me up because I was improving. But the coaches in China weren't afraid to lose their temper at us, and that was a big difference. Because of this vast difference, I felt that my abilities weren't good enough. I started doubting myself. I just wanted to throw the towel in and give up, since I couldn't succeed in any way. I also started to realize that this experience has shaped me. Looking back, I am very thankful for what I have encountered in my new surroundings because I am constantly learning, constantly adapting, and constantly changing with my environment. This made me feel more mature and tougher than I would have been if I had stayed in the United States all along. These experiences have also strongly shaped me to become who I am as a person. And even though my personal experiences aren't what a normal person would consider relatable in any way, there's a ton of other ways that nurture affects our own lives. For instance, take the COVID-19 pandemic, something that connects to each and every one of us. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live, the pandemic definitely affected you. Other than becoming a couch potato and only climbing out of bed for online lessons, most of us were really strongly impacted by all of the hardships that the pandemic laid out for us. I personally felt that I was trapped in my own life and I couldn't succeed and I couldn't move any farther. I'm sure many other people have felt this as well. Businesses stopped and a lot of things were changed. A lot of people had to save up on money and had to stock up on things that we haven't even thought about before. But during this time, we all adapted to change. Our plans for the future were all scrapped, and we had to live a lot differently than we did before the outbreak. And from these experiences, we've all found that we had to conquer the hardships that were laid in front of us, and we had to face the problems that arose in our society instead of back away. And I feel like these experiences have shaped us all to become a new person. This technically means that genetics don't really have a determining say in how we live and how we grow. It's all about a change in the mindset of ourselves when we live through these experiences. In the end, nature versus nurture is still a controversy about whether genetics or experiences impact a child more. From my personal anecdote, my experiences have changed my life in a way that my genetics simply cannot. I was affected in a way that will change my personality and will eventually track my way to my own future. And what I realize is that not everybody is always going to conform to their own genetics. And pretty soon, we'll see that we aren't actually growing up to be just like our parents. Eventually, we'll all be on the track to maturity, and we'll be running down our own lanes. From nurture, I've adapted to changes. Perhaps most important of all, I've learned from my experiences, and I've grown from them. What's important about this is that I don't have to stay the same person I am since I was born. I can change. We can all change, and we can adapt to what we've seen. Genetics is not something we all conform to, and we can see how we're growing and changing throughout our whole lives. And from nurture, we'll be able to see what genuinely sparks our interest and what makes you, you. So, through your experiences, find what you're interested in, pursue it, and don't be pressured to be the doctor, engineer, or lawyer that your parents were before you. Thank you.